Want to get creeped out? Welcome to Just a Little Stitious,
where things go bump in the night and sometimes it's just your fridge. Or it's us tripping over the furniture.
or it's something terrifying lurking in the dark. Hello.
Hi.
We are back again, here to bring you some creepiness this Friday, or whatever day you're listening to this. We hope you enjoyed our previous episodes that were all about creepy games and rituals. Today, it's been a really long time since we did this, but we are doing listener stories. We've got some really good ones.
I love listener stories.
And I want to say, if you sent a story in and it hasn't been read yet, that doesn't mean we're not going to read it.
Do not fret.
Yeah, we're literally reading some stories today that are from almost from a year ago. So just FYI.
It takes us a minute to go through them. And
Exactly.
sometimes we'll pick a shorter one for the end of a long episode.
Mm-hmm.
And for stuff like this, it's kind of just whatever.
Yeah.
But there's more that goes into it than I thought.
Without further ado.
Listener story number 1. So this is a listener story from Charity and her wife, Violet. Want to get creeped out?
I love that.
I love it when people do that.
Me too. I'm actually going to read this one because the writing is small.
I don't have my glasses on. I'm wearing eyelashes.
Okay. So here is the story of my living in a haunted house in a small town in Minnesota. For privacy reasons, I don't want to say the town, but I will say that it is on the Iron Range, an area here well known for mining iron ore. And my house in particular had been built in the late 40s, I think. I'll include as much detail as my ADHD brain can currently recall.
I feel you.
For the record, I am now 23, as is my wife. And though my mom still lives there, neither one of us will go into that house. We don't tell most people why. When I was 12 years old, my mom and I moved in with my grandmother due to our apartment flooding beyond repair. My grandmother was a hoarder. I hadn't experienced much paranormal activity there up until then, but it really ramped up once we got the place semi-clean and took over the laundry as my main household chore. During the day, doing laundry felt pretty normal. As the sun began to go down, though, I would always get this weird sort of pressure slowly expanding from the far corner of the basement. Unfortunately, I was sharing a bedroom with my cousin, and the basement was oftentimes the only place I could go for the privacy a 12 to 14-year-old girl needs. As the evening progressed, less and less of the basement felt usable to me, though my mom said I was simply imagining it. The creepiest part to me at the time was this blur that accompanied said pressure, a pressure that seemed to want me out of the area, which would sit at about the ceiling of the basement. It wasn't really an orb or apparition per se, just a sort of smudge that I assured myself was just a trick of the light. The blur would start in the far corner of the basement and come closer and closer. By the time it hit the middle of the basement, I usually couldn't take it anymore and would go upstairs. One night, I decided to wait it out, but bailed when the blur came even closer than I had ever seen before. The pressure now felt like a tall presence to me, one that conjured up weird, long-limbed mental images.
Ugh.
And the need to escape felt overwhelming. Great writing, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding.
As I scrambled toward the stairs, I could feel it coming closer and closer. But what happened as my foot hit the basement stairs made my blood run cold. I felt a hand press against my lower back, somehow beneath my sweatshirt.
Oh,
It felt skeletal and cool and far too real for my liking. Weird. I ran upstairs without looking back and refused to go back downstairs for a long time after that. My mom told me it was likely just a back spasm, but I did not believe her. 4 years later, my grandmother passed on. Sorry for your loss. And then for a while, my mom moved out to take care of another elderly family member, so it was just my cousin and I in the house. We lived in our upstairs bedrooms pretty much exclusively and only left those rooms to cook meals in the daylight, but we never talked about why. I don't know about her, but for me, it was because that creepy feeling I got in the basement was now expanding to the main floor in the evenings, something it had never done before. I wrote myself off as crazy until I started dating my now wife, a psychically sensitive nurse who claimed that something in the house wanted her gone anytime she stayed over. She refused to go on the main floor after dark, even to just grab something to drink, and when she left for work early enough that it was still dark out, she would avoid looking into the rest of the house. One day I talked her into staying on the main floor with me as I cooked dinner. We were listening to an old record in the living room while I cooked in the kitchen, close by the basement door, and the sun was beginning to set. She complained about feeling like something wanted her to leave the closer to the kitchen she got, which unnerved me, but I begged her to stay in the kitchen because I wanted to keep talking while I cooked. I didn't like to be alone in there, but felt better when someone else was present. Your poor wife.
Yeah, no kidding.
I stopped being able to disbelieve both her and me when her face went white. In the reflection of a cooking pot, she had allegedly seen the apparition of an old, scraggly-haired woman in a nightgown who seemed very angry.
Jesus.
The apparition stayed only visible in the reflection of that cooking pot until we left the room.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the feeling followed us to the other room, and the volume on the record player mysteriously changed while we were talking about what she had seen and felt. This particular record player and this record had never done that before. We turned it off and hurried back upstairs to my bedroom, where I burned protective incense. The present followed us to the door of my bedroom but wouldn't come in. We shut the door and ignored it until my mom stopped by to pick up some clothes before going back to the elderly relatives. My mom listened as we explained everything that had happened and then claimed it to be the ghost of her grandmother, who was a devout Catholic and homophobic. She then read some Bible verses and prayed over both of us as well as the house, as she often did. But we both noticed big gray orbs floating from the hallway into my mom's mouth as she prayed. That's really creepy.
Wow.
The energy in the house felt slightly better afterwards, but my wife never stayed there with me after that, and I moved out a few months later. My mom still lives in that house, but I haven't been back since, and neither has my wife. Maybe not the craziest, most exciting story, but it's one of the craziest things that has ever happened to me personally. Being psychically sensitive, my wife has seen many more things than that. Her dad's house was haunted growing up, and every ghost was a full apparition, for example. But I personally haven't. I will say that this house was once in a local paper due to my uncle attempting to make illegal drugs in the basement. I don't know why I laughed, I'm sorry. And I wonder if he maybe opened some kind of portal by trying and failing to make drugs. I don't know if that's possible. Something to consider. That's really interesting.
What kind of drugs?
I knew you were going to ask that.
I gotta know.
My mom is now sending me all my old dolls, Barbies, Cabbage Patch, and porcelain, which she kept stored in the basement, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was not the end of my paranormal experiences, to be honest. Even if you don't, I've been binge listening to the podcast while I do laundry and cleaning around my current non-haunted house for weeks. And I just had to tell you guys my only real spooky story. I loved it. I loved it. It's so good.
I might
it's so
email her
creepy.
back and tell her we read it.
I think I did. I did
You
email
did?
her. Yeah, because I was like, if you guys have been experiencing anything since the dolls, like, we want to know.
First off, I love your podcast. I grew up in Kentucky. The land my childhood home is on originally belonged to my great-grandfather. He and my great-grandmother came over from Sicily. Ooh, mafia. Just kidding. Jesus Christ. Through New Orleans and bought that property with their house and built a house for my grandma and grandpa to raise their kids there. Eventually, my mom and dad got the last bit of property and built my childhood home there. I had multiple family members pass away on that property. My great-grandfather had had a heart attack in the backyard near the woods. The shock of my great-grandfather's heart attack caused my great-uncle to pass away inside the house because they were so close. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah, that's so sad.
My mom, we're not done. We're still sorry.
Oh, shit.
My mom's brother passed away when he was very young of Down syndrome. And because my grandma's house was on the same property, he passed away there too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is a lot of
My
deaths.
great-grandmother also passed away in that house of old age, and my mom's sister bought the house following her passing.
So many.
Yeah, I grew up going to that house all the time, even though I never met my great-grandparents. When I was a kid, I was absolutely terrified of the dark and of ghosts, but I would hear and see things all the time in my house, my aunt's house and my grandma's house. All three were next door to each other, so my sister, cousins, and I constantly bouncing between the houses. It never felt particularly threatening, but because I hated the dark, it was still scary. I always saw things out of the corner of my eye, like shadows or lights, but the way they darted around was almost playful in a way. I like that. It was common when I was a kid to hear people talking to me in the middle of the night. It felt like there was a general murmur, like when you're in a loud room, but I would specifically hear a man's voice and a woman's voice. They would talk to me, ask me about myself, my sister, my mom, and my aunts, and the conversation always felt protective and loving. I can't remember if they said this or if I just felt it, but I always knew this was my great-grandparents. It was like having a conversation with them in my head. When I was really little, it didn't bother me, but at a certain point, I had started to feel uneasy about it. Maybe because I was gaining awareness that maybe hearing disembodied voices wasn't particularly normal and could be a bad thing. It's not. One particular night, I remember I started crying because I was afraid. Even though the spirits never said anything threatening, I remember in my head thinking I wish they would just go away and leave me alone. The woman's voice, who I believed was my great-grandmother, said, "We need to leave. We're scaring her." The general murmur faded away, and I never heard anything like that again. Being Italian Catholics, my mom's side of the family is pretty superstitious and a deep-rooted belief in the afterlife. And the idea that spirits and energy, good and bad, can manifest itself in the world. This house and the other two houses were all blessed by priests, had crosses and blessed holy objects all around. That's why I really do trust the spirits were my family and nothing evil or threatening. I honestly feel a little guilty about telling them to go away, but I feel good knowing there's energies protecting and looking out for my family. We've since moved out of my childhood home and my grandmother has passed away. So non-family members are living in both of those houses. However, my aunt and my uncle still live in my great-grandparents' house, and I still go over there a lot. I still see things out of the corner of my eye, still feel almost a hovering presence, and it still feels very non-threatening and protective. The area where my great-grandfather passed away is always green, even in the dead of winter, which is really weird.
That is weird.
I also have dreams about my grandma whenever I feel like I need her advice, and I fully believe that it's her communicating with me. My family that has passed is definitely out and about looking out for the rest of us, especially when spooky stories are usually more negative. I think it's nice to hear and know that not all ghosts are bad.
So true.
Sorry, this message is long. I'm a yapper at heart. I love it.
Yeah, me too.
That was amazing. This was pretty long and wholesome, but I do have a couple shorter ones. Creepy weird for my mom's older sister who lived in a haunted house, if you'd be interested in those as well.
We would.
Always interested.
Yes. We really like the shorter ones for like end of episodes too.
Shorter ones are good for,
Love that. I like this story a lot, and the person named it a good name. Paranormal or paranoid.
I like
it. Yeah. This person wants to be anonymous. I started your podcast like 2 days ago and have since finished every episode, and I just love your podcast so much.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
Just fucking hype us up a little more, man. Come on.
I love to be hyped up. We get so many comments, and like seriously, we appreciate all of them.
You guys, I love a good ego boost. It's awesome.
Yeah, I also even like the ones that are upset with Jessica for being an asshole.
I don't mind those either. I'm like Tinkerbell. If I don't get enough compliments and like you don't hype me up enough, like I'll die.
She'll lose her sparkle.
I will fucking die.
All right.
I'm ready. I'm listening.
Now to the juicy stuff. My story spans over 5 to 6 years of living in this house, so I will try to condense it as much as I can. In 2016, my family and I moved into a house in a small southeastern town in Kansas, where me and my sisters started to get tormented by what we think was a spirit or a couple of spirits. Me and my younger sister were the ones mainly affected by the unseen force. It all started when we found handprints, an adult one and a little child's hand, on the wallpaper in our shared bathroom. And after we said something to our parents, everything blew out of proportion. I started having vivid dreams of a lady in a dark dress peering out of the closet while I slept. I don't like that. I had these dreams for months. Every time I had the dream about the lady, she would be closer to my bed. And the closer she got to me in these dreams, the more trouble I'd have falling asleep.
Yeah, fair.
Or I would wake up to my TV being static or playing a weird station.
I hate that.
There was a random time that my Xbox randomly turned on, waking me up from a deep sleep. Weird. Little did I know, my little sister, who was right across the hallway, was experiencing similar activity. This occurred for months, and one day we actually experienced something while we were awake. We walked out of my sister's room to a little rubber ball rolling in a circle right on the platform at the top of the stairs.
That's cool.
She says, terrifying. I know. I think it's terrifying, but also cool,
so
but
cool.
not if you're a little kid. That'd be scary.
Cool now.
But we even went as far as to debunk this because we simply couldn't believe what we were seeing. I love that.
You have to.
Little children
trying to like jump around
paranormal investigators.
And, like, figure it out. Yeah, I love that.
Every time we placed the ball in the same spot, it would descend down the stairs. After this, everything went calm. Freaked out, me and my little sister actually stopped sleeping in our rooms and slept with our mom for a couple of months. We thought it was all over. Maybe we were just freaked out and our minds were playing tricks on us. Well, we were wrong. One day after school, I was logging off my laptop, COVID times, and all of a sudden I heard a, "Hello, are you busy?" in my sister's voice. It was so loud that it sounded like she was in her bedroom trying to get my attention. So, of course, not thinking anything of it, I responded that I had just finished my schoolwork. And in response, I got a, "Hello, how are you?"
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I'd be gone.
which is when I felt a chill run up my body because we never had problems hearing each other before. And now the voice seemed more childlike and less like my sister.
Oh, fuck off.
So I started walking into her bedroom to find out she wasn't in there. Spooked, I ran downstairs to tell my mom and found my sister sleeping on the couch right next to her. Thankfully, later that week, I flew out to my dad's. My parents are divorced. We did 50-50 custody. While I was at my dad's, I got a call that my mom and siblings would be moving into a new house while I was gone. And that same night, I had a dream about the lady in black and a little boy's shadow watching me from the doorway, as if they were bidding farewell to me, knowing their time tormenting me and my sister was up.
Jesus Christ.
My sister has come forward and shared a bunch of creepy stuff that happened when they were packing up that house. But so I don't mess up any details, I'll leave it at that.
Wow.
After we moved, everything was back to normal and we never had problems again. Sadly, I am terrified of the dark because of these events, but I'm working to get over it. Girl,
That's fair.
it's okay.
So is
I'm
she.
also afraid of the dark, even though I love the paranormal.
That's so funny. I know.
Thank you so much for taking the time to read this. This is the first time I've ever shared my experiences from that house, and there's so much that it's hard to put into words. Thank you again. Hope this gave you a little fright because I swear me and my sister were terrified of this house. And even years later, after we've both grown up, we still talk about our experiences
Aw,
from that house.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that
It's
a
a
lot.
gooder.
It was a really good one and terrifying.
I like it a lot. So this story is from Mary from our Discord, and this is the Glenville ghost story. This was back around 2008, 2009. I was going to Glenville State College in West Virginia. Now it's Glenville State University. I grew up an hour and a half away, so I didn't go far from home. Also, only 30 minutes down the road is Weston Trans-Allegheny Mental Hospital, one of the most haunted places in West Virginia. That's neat.
Yeah, I really want to go there so bad.
Yeah, you should. This was my third year attending this college. It was well known that the campus was haunted and even had a cemetery on campus. Even my dorm room at the time was haunted. Now, this specific event happened right before Halloween. There was a paranormal group that came and did some ghost tours. I was a cheerleader at the time. Me and a few other teammates decided to go together. We each had to have a buddy, so me and another cheerleader buddied up and the other two did the same. We were at the top of campus, which is on the top of a big hill. The building called Clark Hall. We were all split up into 3 groups. We all went into Clark Hall through the main doors. Now, mind you, all the power was cut off by the main breaker, so nothing would interfere with readings. Likewise, all the windows were shut too. Everything was basically locked down, no lights, no moving air, nothing. Completely still for the group investigation. This is also when the weird started to happen. I like the way she said that.
I like that too.
Because me and my buddy were right behind our fellow teammates. One of the girls had light blonde hair, so it was easy to keep track of them. But somehow, as we were making our way to the second floor, we got separated from our group. How that happened, I'm still unsure. We started figuring it out when we were in the hallway and they were doing voice recordings. That's when we decided to quietly leave and go find our group. We walked back down the hall to the end where a door was. It was completely open. It was one of those old wooden doors, solid dark wood with a little bit of glass on top to see through. Now, remember, there was no wind, no airflow, nothing. That big, heavy old door came flying towards us, slammed shut, and started to rattle all on its own. It was like something out of a movie, but it wasn't. It was real.
Holy shit.
My buddy and I gripped the crap out of each other's arms. I spoke to whatever ghost did it. Please let us through. We are just trying to get back to our group. The door stopped rattling and I was able to open it. That's crazy.
That is.
We quickly went through the door and luckily our group was right down the hallway. We caught up to our friends. No one had heard the door slam. They had wondered where we were but never heard it. Our group was busy taking still pictures to see if they could catch anything. That's not where this ends though, because later we left the building. We were on our way down towards the cemetery, and as we were walking, my right ankle felt like it tripped over something. I fell down on top of it, hurting it. But there were no limbs, rocks, holes, or anything. My ankle just snapped. My flyer in cheer, I was the base of the stunt, and she was the flyer who went back up in the stunt. Okay, got it. Helped carry me back, which I didn't believe she could do at the time, but she did.
Holy shit.
All 4 of us in our little group took me back to the dorms. Later, I found out that I had refractured that ankle. It's been years now since it all happened, but looking back, I am psychic, and I can remember the energy I felt at that door. It felt like an older woman, and she was mad because she thought we were going to just run off. So her slamming the door in our faces was basically her pointing her finger in our faces, telling us to go back. It's an experience I'll never forget, especially re-breaking my ankle.
No doubt.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah, that's super creepy. The door slamming would literally make me... Oh, that would be so cool though. Oh my God, I'm actually so jealous.
Yeah, that's mad cool.
Mad cool.
Mad cool, man.
Mad cow disease. So this story is from our friend Samantha in our Discord. Hi, it's Samantha from Discord. And I decided I want to share some of my ghost stories that happened to me and my family while living in our old house. I want to start by saying that since I was around 7, I could see ghosts and communicate with spirits. My mom is an empath and can read the living. I can also do this. And my aunt, my mom's sister, can also see spirits and communicate with them. So the paranormal has always been a very active part of my life, and honestly, I'm very used to it by now. My grandmother and grandfather bought this house, and my family had to move into it around 2008. For a year, my grandmother, grandfather, great-grandmother, and mom, dad, and 2 siblings and I all lived in this house together, and paranormal stuff started happening the first day we moved in. I was only 8 when we moved in there, and my memory isn't that great for the first 2 years in the house. But a few things that I do remember were that a tall man wearing a coal miner's hat would hang out in my grandmother's closet. Ooh, yuck. I always told my grandmother he was there. I wouldn't sleep unless the closet door was shut. Ugh, no kidding.
Yeah, fair.
Also in that house, I had 2 experiences with a mimic. Oh, those creep me out so much. We need to do a whole episode on mimics and doppelgangers. I didn't find out it was a mimic until way later when I looked into it. The first time was shortly after we moved into our house. My grandmother, parents, and siblings were at her old apartment getting stuff packed into the U-Haul, and not everyone could go. So my aunt and I stayed behind. We were both in the living room and clearly saw my grandfather walk into the hallway towards my aunt's room. He came home an hour later. I thought I imagined it, but my aunt and I both saw him clearly. After a few months, maybe closer to a year, my grandmother and grandfather found a new house, so they moved out with my aunt and my great-grandmother, but my aunt would come stay over all the time. When they moved out, the paranormal activity doubled, and most of it I remember. The house was on an ancient burial ground and a big portal for all kinds of strange spirits. We had dogs and cats, and they would constantly stare at things that weren't there. Things would move and so much more. You would hear a little girl calling mommy if you were home alone, and balls would just roll across the floor without anyone touching them. If you walked into the laundry room, you would instantly be hit with sadness and feel bone-crushing grief because a lady dressed in all white would just cry against the wall. We would play hide and seek with ghost children, and I thought it was totally normal. They were dressed all in white and looked like they were wearing clothes from the 1900s. They had blonde curly hair and bright blue eyes. Oh my God. The paranormal activity really started when I moved into the most haunted room in the house, and honestly, I would never sleep without a light on again. I had a mirror facing out in the hallway, and I would sit and brush my hair facing the mirror, and bam, faces would appear smiling behind me. Jesus. Let me tell you about my other mimic story. Honestly, I thought I was going crazy, but my sister heard it too, so that's how I know it really happened. My mom, during the summertime, would leave all the windows open. My mom, dad, and brother left to go grocery shopping, and my sister and I decided we were just going to stay home. We were in my bedroom, and this was a 1-floor house, so no matter where you were in the house, you could hear everything. We heard my mom's car pull up and pull into the driveway. We heard the door slide open because it was a van, the doors close, and we heard my dad clearly say, "Come on, Bruce," my brother's name, "let's go check on the girls." We heard the van door shut and the front doorknob jiggle like someone was going to open the front door. So we got up to go help with the groceries, and nobody at all was home. There was no car in the driveway. I checked everywhere, the front yard and the backyard, and my parents got home 15 minutes later. Honestly, knowing what I know about mimics, I'm shocked it was able to do that, especially with how much energy it would have needed. My aunt had a very strange experience in that house as well, and she told me I could share it. It was late at night, and she was sleeping over, so she decided to sleep in my room for the night, and I had a sleepover in my sister's room. It was so hot in my room, so she decided to sleep with the windows open. She was trying to fall asleep, so she closed her eyes, and about 5 minutes later, she heard something outside. It sounded like an animal being mauled to death, so she got up and shut the windows without looking outside. Then she ran back to the bed, got under the covers, and faced the wall so she wouldn't see anything scary. A few minutes later, she heard the scariest demonic-like voice saying something in Latin. Oh, scary. So she pulled the covers over her head and stayed in bed until day. Thankfully, I never heard anything like that in the room. All I had was a little boy come into the room and whisper in my ear, "Quick, he's coming, hide." That's all. That's it. That's big. Yeah. It would wake me up from a deep sleep. My mom and dad would be at work, and we would smell smoke and think the house was on fire because it was so strong. My siblings and I would run outside and call my mom, but thankfully it was something sinister that just liked to trick us. Also, if you were in any of the bathrooms, you would feel like you were being watched, so we all hated that house. God, I hate that. The person who bought it from my parents doesn't even live in it. It just sits empty. I would love to go back and ghost hunt in that house again as an adult, but I'm also a little worried about doing that. Even if I drive by the house, the energy feels off, and I always feel like I'm being watched.
Yeah.
She also has a lot more stories, she says. We would love to hear them. That's really creepy.
Yes, super creepy.
I have a theory, though.
What?
About her hearing her family get home and the van door closing and everything.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't a mimic. Maybe because she's sensitive, it was like another timeline, like a glitch in the Matrix. And her and her sister are like...
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
Could've
Maybe. It could have been a mimic too. But I don't know. Just a theory.
Food for thought. I've always been able to see very well in the dark, and I'm still able to see well in the dark. The curtains on the door outside were a dark wine color and blackout curtains, so there was no light seeping into the bedroom. All the doors were closed. This took place in Ontario, the middle of fall. I was about 4 or 5 at the time. I am now 22, almost 23. I am an artist. I've been drawing for 10 years. I have tried to draw the thing that I saw, but when I start, I feel the same fear I felt when I saw it. I also feel like I shouldn't give a physical form. I feel that if I do, it might come to visit me again. I always slept on the left side of the bed. It was the closest to the closet, so I could just step out of bed, go into the closet, and get dressed. It was a school day. I woke up before I was supposed to, probably because my dad was coming home from work around 6 a.m. I could see the light from the kitchen peeking under the door that led to the hallway. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I looked around the room for one of my plushies. I looked at the wall in front of me and saw what looked like a cat, not a real world cat. It looked a bit more cartoony. It was way bigger than a cat should have been, and it also had what I like to call a witch hat. It was just staring at me. Sounds like something from like Bewitched or what's that show there? Sabrina
the Teenage Witch. I love that show.
I thought I was probably dreaming or half asleep, so I rubbed my eyes hard, but it was still there, just staring. I was terrified. I was so scared that I hid underneath the covers and started breathing heavily. I don't know how long I was there, but when I finally managed to take a peek to see if it was still there, it was still staring at me. I poked my head out and just stared back at it. It's a power move.
Totally.
It then started to look around my room with only its head moving. It was moving very slowly and calmly. It then stopped looking around and went back to staring at me. I felt paralyzed, but I managed to scream. My dad rushed into the room, slammed the door open, and turned on the lights. I started crying, trying to tell him what I saw. He looked behind the door and nothing was there. He managed to calm me down, tried to put me back to sleep, as if I was going to sleep after that, turned off the lights and closed the door, and he left. My eyes adjusted and there was nothing there. It was gone. I guess my dad had told my mom about what had happened because she ended up putting an armoire where the shadow had been. Ever since then, I have had trouble sleeping. Sometimes melatonin and other medication are not enough to knock me out.
Wow.
I stopped sleeping on the left side of the bed after that night. Kid logic. It wasn't until a year or 2 ago that I started sleeping on the left side again. I've had a few encounters with the paranormal. My brother and I would hear voices in the basement constantly. The house was newer. My parents were the first owners. Something even brushed my hair down there once. I was previously a healthcare worker during COVID and definitely saw spirits. I worked at a nursing home and took care of elderly people with dementia. Some of them would pass away, and their call bells would go off constantly in their rooms with no one there.
I've heard of that happening.
I live in a different town now in an apartment with my fiance and pet Macaw.
Macaw?
Macaw?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a bird.
Oh.
Jessica's afraid of birds.
But sometimes I still feel like I'm being watched, probably by your bird. Just kidding.
Jesus Christ.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I felt like I'm being watched ever since that night. My fiance had an even more terrifying experience with a ghost. I'll have to ask him if it would be okay if I shared his experience with you guys. I like that one.
I think that one is really interesting because the cat, when you hear about it, doesn't sound very scary, but obviously like for a child, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Could it have been a dream? Maybe. But it's the fact that it still scares her to this day as an adult, I find very interesting.
Yeah. I think that was definitely something.
She also included a picture of the location of everything, so we'll include that here. And this is going to be our last story of the evening. Hi, my name is Tyra Lee. I hope I said that right. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I'm wanting to share one of my recent experiences. Before I start, I just want to say I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much. And I've listened to all your podcast episodes on repeat every night, and I'm hanging on for you guys to post a new episode. That's so cute and so nice.
I love that.
I live in a big house located in a small remote suburb in Melbourne. Our house is quite old, but it wasn't haunted. My parents went to visit my grandparents up in Warrnambool, sorry if I said that wrong, which is about a 4-hour trip from our house. So they stayed there with my younger siblings for a few nights. I have 2 younger siblings, a sister and a brother. My sister is 3 and my brother is 2. We believe that while my parents were in Warrnambool, an entity attached itself to my little sister and came home with them. Activity didn't really start until a few days after they had come home, other than my siblings feeling too scared to sleep in their room. At this time, we had no idea why. Before any activity started, I was having dreams about my younger sister being possessed.
Ugh.
I had a dream about our younger sister being possessed once. It was terrifying.
She could have been for real when she was younger.
Oh my God.
We could have.
No.
There were times.
Oh, please.
She was scary.
Anyways, dreams about her younger sister being possessed and something tormenting my little brother while he slept, trying to wake him up and scare him. I was also experiencing sleep paralysis at this time. Oof, sorry to hear that. After a few days, small things started happening, like loud banging on the walls and doors during the night, our iPads and TVs turning on randomly throughout all times of the night and even during the day, and my dad waking up with bruises and scratches on his body like he was being attacked while he slept. Over time, it got worse. One night, my little sister was sleeping in her room, and in the middle of the night, we heard her start screaming. My mom ran to the room to see what happened, and as she opened the door, she felt the temperature was freezing cold and there was a rotten egg flesh smell.
Yep.
It's a smell that is so hard to explain, and it really doesn't compare to anything. My little sister was sitting there terrified, crying, saying there was a monster in her room. She didn't sleep in her room again after that.
Aww.
That morning, we decided to look at the baby cam that we have in her room to see what happened. There was a loud, screechy voice speaking to her, but we couldn't make out any clear words that it was saying.
Gross.
It was more like it was growling at her.
Oh, God. Jesus.
At this point, me and my mom were terrified. We knew something evil was in our house, tormenting everyone. After that, we started visiting our local church and putting crosses all around our house and using holy water. This only made things worse. The loud banging became more frequent. Our dogs would stare into the house, barking and frothing at the mouth because they could see it. My little brother would scream and attack my mom if she tried to put him in his own room because he was so scared. Then I started to believe my dreams were real. One night, I experienced sleep paralysis. When it happened, I heard my bedroom door slowly open, then footsteps on my carpet walking towards me. Oh, God, okay. I then felt it crawl into my bed and lay next to me.
Oh, fuck no.
I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I just started crying because I was so scared.
Oh, God.
Then I heard it come up to my ear and hush me. I remember telling myself to try and calm myself so I could snap out of it. I eventually did, and I left home to stay with my boyfriend for a few nights to get away from the house. I had been feeling sick and lethargic since all of it started, so I needed to get away for a few days. We ended up organizing to get the house blessed. And while I was at my boyfriend's house and my mother was at the church with the kids, my dad was at home having a nap. He woke up to a loud bang and scraping noise across the tiles. He lay in bed in shock, then went to see what happened. Our oven, which is like 400 kilograms, was dragged out of its place, then picked up and dropped on the ground. The legs of the oven were crushed and the glass was broken. That's fucking crazy.
That is crazy.
We could then later see my dad laying in bed and hear the loud bang from the oven through the baby cam footage. He was the only person home. Interesting.
Jesus Christ.
After that, we immediately organized a priest to come and bless the house. In the following days before the blessing, the house felt cold and like there was just an evil presence. Everyone was sick and felt drained and exhausted. All the noise caused sleepless nights. My father was rushed to the hospital due to internal bleeding. The entity was physically hurting him constantly. We had the house blessed, and since then, it's been pretty quiet. The kids are in sleep therapy now, and we do a cleansing once a week.
Wow.
There are still occasionally noises throughout the night, but it's getting better slowly. Thank you for reading this. Me and my family have really been through a lot the past couple of months.
That was insane.
That
was a good one.
That is clearly a very strong entity or something worse.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that
really
story.
Scary. All of these stories were really cool, really amazing, scary, heartwarming.
We appreciate these stories
a lot. We really do.
We love these.
Yes.
That's why we do it.
And we also really appreciate all of your kind comments and your support.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you like stories like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, maybe hit the notification bell so that you get notified when we post. We do have a Patreon as well that you could check out. Make sure you're following us on all of our socials, if you don't mind, if you could be so kind.
And if you have any stories you'd like to share that you would like us to read, email them to justalittlestitiouspod@gmail.com.
And that is it for this one.
That's it. That's all, folks.
Later. Gators. Thank you for listening to Just a Little Stitious. If you like stories like this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
And before you go to bed tonight, make sure to check under your bed, just in case that sound you heard wasn't the fridge.